Good morning. Thanks for coming. American Vanadium is a Canadian company, and I'm going to tell you a good background this morning on vanadium, which has been very important in the steel industry for the past 100 years or so. But now it's really very important, we believe, in the next 5, 10, 15 years in the energy storage side. And we're going to play a very important role having the only deposit of vanadium in the United States. As far as key members to talk about here, one is very important, especially at the top there. The executive chairman, Ron McDonald, is playing a very active role in executing our strategy. When I joined the company 2 years ago, the battery industry hadn't really evolved, and I'll be telling you more about it, but we believe it is evolving extremely quickly in the United States, and it has evolved already in China. And he has a tremendous background of bringing strategic metals to the forefront. And so he's really leading that strategic push. Myself, I'm a mining engineer. I actually did about a dozen-year stint in biotech. And I think you'll see by the end that that technology experience is helping play a serious role in building this business. As far as operations on the mine side, we have extraordinary team that we're building. Two guys that are really in the top 5, probably of what they do in the United States. Mike Doyle has built 3 heap leach operations in Nevada from start right through permitting and start up successful production. Ron Espel just joined us recently from Barrick. Again, regarded as one of the top 5 permitting guys in the United States. Left a very senior role in Barrick to join us because he really enjoys what we're doing and believes strongly in our project. The company actually, this project was drilled out considerably in the past by Union Carbide, Noranda and such, so we didn't have to do those early exploration dilution rounds. So for a company that already has a feasibility study done on a project, it's very tight, clean share structure. Which I think is important as we have good business development happening this year, should affect the stock. As far as management, still in a good, strong position. Institutionally, we have 2 of the top Canadian institutions invested. One is Mackenzie Group, largest resource fund in North America, and then Dundee Equity Funds as well as invested. And I'll come back to the operation a little later, but just to give you a sense what we're talking about here, is we have a project right in the middle of Nevada. It is a heap leach operation. The strip ratio is actually 0.2. We actually don't have any waste in the first 3 years of mining, so it's very low cost, very straightforward operation. It's really quite unique in the geology. You won't find another one of these in the world, we believe, that enables us to use the sulfuric acid heap leach. But we put out a very strong feasibility study late last year, and moving forward now into the permitting and the detailed engineering side. Now, vanadium, don't want to get into too much depth about the past, but historically it's about steel. It was first really introduced globally by Henry Ford. The Model T actually was the first commercial vehicle that actually used vanadium. Because when you use a tiny bit of vanadium in your steel, it makes it, it can increase the strength by 50 to 100%. You're not actually trying to increase the strength, but what it allows you to do is use 30 to 50% less steel, and you still maintain that integrity. So that's why it's in pretty much every piece of rebar and structural steel in the United States. So it plays a great role there, and also in high-speed tools. As far as super alloys, titanium vanadium alloy is the key to every aircraft. Right now, I think the Dreamliner, they say, has 1.5 tons of vanadium. So whereas in steel, it might be 0.05% concentration in the steel, in the aircraft alloys up to 5% vanadium content. And then it's critical in the chemical industry and in the future in the energy storage business. So this is really why it's really considered strategic, especially in China, which has just introduced their new 5-year plan last year, which includes a real push to what's called high-strength, low-alloy steel, which it gets away from the old, thick carbon steel. You can see by using a little bit of vanadium in your steel, that 1 ton of high-strength low alloy equals 1.4 tons of carbon steel. And so that's why there's a big push. But actually how China's actually seeing it, if you use a little bit of vanadium, you're going to use 30% less iron ore in making the steel. So you need less iron ore mines, less shipping. They're being held hostage by the Australians on the iron ore. So that's why they're making a big push on high-strength low alloy. They even say by moving to high-strength low alloy steels in China, they'll need 15% less steel mills. So it's a huge strategic advantage. And you can see they're still well behind. But China produces 110 million tons of rebar a year. And if you look at the global production of steel in its entirety is 450 million tons. China's rebar is a quarter of world steel production. And only about 20% of that has vanadium in it. So moving that up to world standards is going to put huge pressure on the vanadium marketplace. And it's really, the growth of, vanadium is not like copper, or copper is more of a bellwether for Chinese GDP. More fridges, more copper. Vanadium has that GDP growth, but it's actually that increased specific consumption because you're increasing it and using it many more different metals because the idea is to make lighter metals, save on oil and energy costs. But the future really where we want to play a direct role is in the battery sector. And it's really all about mass storage, grid level storage. And this is really where China's already moving strategically again, is they're creating new cities with new smart grids. And actually if you provide good storage for the energy, you can increase the efficiency of the grid by 10 to 15%, which is huge. And they understand there's not enough oil and coal in the world to satisfy their future needs. They have to move to renewables. They have to be much more efficient. And storage from renewable right through to the home is a key goal of their new 5-year plan. The 5-year plan actually had a specific goal of a minimum of 5% of the electrical power has to be in storage by year 2020, which is a huge jump forward for the industry. In fact, there's one, Shanghai Electric's biggest power company in the world is doing a $2 billion demonstration project on renewables and storage, which is monumental scale. The two batteries are actually relying on lithium-ion and vanadium flow batteries for the portable storage components. But they're making a key part, and they're actually doing this because they want to create these microgrids with renewable and storage throughout Asia and actually right throughout the world and even to the United States. The United States is definitely further behind. There is no energy policy that's driving this, so it is taking place sort of behind the scenes. There's a lot of funding, but it's moving closer and closer to that sort of commercial stage. Actually, this week, the world's largest vanadium flow battery was commissioned in California. So it is coming here, but actually in China it's happening. They're already putting in 3 megawatt, 5 megawatt batteries. And so where they're able to have a countrywide policy that just forces it down, it's now migrating its way into the United States. And why does it work? Vanadium flow is an extremely unique battery. You have essentially these are just massive tanks of sulfuric acid with vanadium in it. And the bigger the tank, the more energy you can store. So it's fully scalable. And that's really the difference between lithium-ion and vanadium flow is that, essentially lithium-ion is the majority of the market in storage right now because the electric vehicle market hasn't taken off, so there's sort of an oversupply of batteries. So really they're stacking all these lithium-ion batteries and calling it mass storage, but it's really not truly scalable. What you have here is a battery. It's actually in solution. You have vanadium on both sides. And so that's why you need a lot of vanadium to make these work. Actually, half the cost going forward is probably going to be vanadium in the batteries. And on either side, you're able to manipulate vanadium very simply, the ionic state. It's the only metal where you can, if you pass it over an electrode in solution, you change the ionic state. So on one side, you have vanadium 2 and 3. On one side of the membrane of vanadium 4, 5. So if you think when you pump it one direction over the electrode, the vanadium 3 goes down to 2 and the 4 goes up to 5. You have this great electrical potential. That's creating this huge charge in the batteries. And then you turn the pumps the other direction and you discharge. And so it's almost fully efficient. It's up towards 90% efficient, the batteries, where lithium ion are more than 65% range, and lead acid are about 35%. And again, it's truly scalable to whatever size you want. So it has huge advantages. These batteries will be there for 20 years. The vanadium is never really used up because it's not a chemical reaction. So that's why it is seen and now as the hope going forward. The big shift in the 2 years since I've been here is that there are a lot of companies and big companies now taking on the commercial phase. Whereas when I joined, it was a lot of sort of more mom and pop research. But this technology was invented 25 years ago. Sumitomo's been at it for 20 years. They spent almost $100 million. And just in the last months, they've decided to go full-scale commercial. United Technologies built one of these batteries for the Department of Energy in the States. They're looking at going forward. There's a dozen Chinese companies making this. So it is moving to that real commercial phase. It fits really well with our schedule. So this is where you see what it's going to do to vanadium. Is you have the classic steel growth story, increase of titanium uses because more and more specialty metals is going to bump it. The problem is there's just not a lot of mines out there in the world. Vanadium is found mostly in iron ore mines. And there are not a lot of primary vanadium mines that can come on stream in the next 5-10 years. So all these increased uses, even if you don't even look at energy storage, are going to have a tremendous impact on the price of vanadium going forward here. As far as production, like I mentioned, most of them are coming as a co-product. The first slag cast off in a number of iron ore mines in China, Russia, and South Africa have vanadium. There is none in the United States. Primary mines, mostly they're iron ore mines. The iron ore isn't economic, but the vanadium is. So it's a little more expensive for those. This is the area we fit in. And then there's secondary, which actually is probably half of the United States. Vanadium comes from refining heavy oils out of Mexico and Venezuela. Their oils have a little bit of vanadium. So as you refine it, there's some vanadium that's processed in the United States. But here you see what the tightness of the market overall and the advantage. You got one huge spike here is when China changed that regulation I just talked about. They changed it in 2005 without really thinking ahead that there is not that much vanadium in the world to meet that increased demand immediately. So they're now phasing it in over the next number of years. So when they changed put that law, the building code in, price quadrupled, spiked dramatically, and within a month they had to change their mind, withdraw it. Then there was the craziness of 2008, but now it's really expected to rise pretty dramatically over the next number of years. Again, this is just the steel business, not related to the battery business. Importantly, in the United States, it's all imported. And there's no real serious primary vanadium mine on the horizon at all, which puts us in a great position. United States is in a real critical issue that its key supplies really is Venezuela, Russia, China, and South Africa. So it's in a really insecure spot where we can play a great role. So with our project, as I mentioned here, we're right in the middle of Nevada. The first deposit and there's a number of them. The first one is a 6.5 year mine life. In the feasibility study, we have a resource that's 10 years based on 2 deposits, and we're going to be exploring more. You can go on the website and take a good look at our feasibility study. The numbers are extremely strong moving forward. Again, just based on pricing forecast of the steel business. You can see here actually what is unique, because we have a sedimentary deposit as opposed to that heavy iron ore magnetites, which is where most of the mines in the world are. So it's very clean product that can produce not only the high-priced products for titanium market, but actually directly produce it for the electrolyte business. But you can actually see the vanadium on the surface here, because essentially in Nevada, it's heavy, it's old rock. It's been oxidized, crushed, and crumbled, and Mother Nature has basically already leached it once. It's trapped in the supergene zone. So a lot of the vanadium is actually already on the fractures, and that's what makes it amenable to the sulfuric acid heap leach. Nice, simple operation. That's why we're very comfortable. We haven't seen any data that's giving us any pause for concern on permitting. We expect our timeline is about 2 years for permitting and about 9 months actually a construction period on the mine. You see the first deposit here. The second one is in the resource. And then this big long thrust fault here, there's a third deposit up north, and there's 4 down south. So it's just a 1 mile run down here to the leach pad and the tiny little plant here to process the solution that comes off. But we're located just south of Eureka. We get water and power from this ranch just 7 miles north here. So excellent infrastructure. What is unique about us is because it's nice little simple inexpensive process, along the stage, instead of drying it out and making vanadium pentoxide, we actually make the electrolyte here. And that really makes us unique in the world, because right now the companies that are building the batteries are paying $15 to $25 a pound equivalent, whereas right now, you know, the price of vanadium pentoxide flake for the steel industry is about $6.50. But because of our process, we can actually make the electrolyte for that same low cost. Our operating cost in our feasibility study is just over $4. So $4 puts us in a huge strategic spot in the United States to have not only the only supply of vanadium, but the only supply of vanadium electrolyte in the United States and the cheapest supply of vanadium electrolyte in the world. And that's where we're playing a different role in this business. Our goal is not to be selling product to the steel business, or even actually selling electrolyte to the battery business. Our role with our chairman is to help create the battery business in the United States. So we're looking internationally at all those partners. We're in strong discussions because everybody wants to get into the U.S. electricity market. It is the biggest market. It is untapped. It's the highest margin. The Chinese, Japanese want to get in, the Europeans. But you can't enter this business unless you have a long-term supply of vanadium. You're talking Sumitomo, United Technologies, the Chinese. They want to go into this on such a scale, you can't be buying it in the open market. You need that long-term supply. So what we're doing is leveraging off that to actually get into the battery business. We want a joint venture partnership into the battery business and help create it. For that, we're ready to commit that long-term supply of vanadium at a stable price. And that's the key. That's why Sumitomo stopped commercialization process about 4 years ago. When that price spiked, they backed off, because when it's half your cost of vanadium and the price quadruples, you're losing money. So you just can't go in the business without it. And that's where we think we have a tremendous opportunity as a strategic supplier in the United States to help build this business for the United States. And that's our goal this year, is to develop those partnerships and push the project forward into production, but primarily to push the mass storage battery business into commercial phase. And that is my talk. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot.